LaVonya Goodwin, and I am running for Omaha City Council District 2. I am from Omaha, Nebraska, actually born and raised in South Omaha and moved to the north, actually 24th Street when I was 16 years old. So Omaha born and bred. Oh my gosh, well last year Omaha was named the #1 place to live in the nation by Forbes magazine, but I always love Omaha's food. I've traveled all over the nation, and I feel like just our various cultures and ethnicities, we've got some of the best food really in the nation. Well, in 2020, I started the North 24th Street Business Improvement District, and that's really an economic development engine. And honestly, as we began to problem solve in this district through safety and security, litter control, even bringing small business support, and our biggest projects, the North 24th Street Streetscape Master Plan, to be honest, we didn't have the support in that council seat to really move those projects forward. And so really, I'm trying to level up, take the work that I've done on North 24th Street and expand it to the rest of the Omaha City Council District 2. Right, so a city council person sits right under the mayor, really as an executive board, making decisions for the district that they represent, but also for the rest of the city. Most of that work is about zoning, is about the city budget, is about safety and the various programs that the city supports. And so the city council helps to lead the direction of the city under the mayor's cooperation, and also helps to decide, what's a priority for the fiscal agenda of the city of Omaha. We are in a housing crisis, and homelessness is a part of that housing crisis. But really, today, Omaha, like most cities in America, needs all levels of housing. Okay, we need affordable housing, we need market rate housing, we need middle income housing. And right now, we're under the current, housing stock. So we really need to be building more housing. I do think it's important that we have the type of housing that's going to bring people together that makes a thriving community. And so that's best when it's mixed income. We start talking about homelessness. Clearly, we've seen our homelessness population grow over the course of the last few years. Again, I think the city government can support the programs that currently are supporting the homelessness population, but I also think we need to look at some of the daytime programming that would give people something productive to do after during the day. But also, there's some root causes of homelessness, and they're multifaceted that also need to be supported. I think my top priority is serving the constituents of District 2 and ensuring that the progress that the rest of the city is seeing, that we can move along as well. We need equitable economic development, okay? We need a safe community where people can, live and thrive and raise their families, start their businesses. I really feel that people shouldn't have to move west of 72nd Street to enjoy Omaha. And I also think we can elevate the assets that are in District 2. If we look at a lot of the history, even of this state, it started right here in District 2. So how do we elevate that, build a tourist destination where people can enjoy our culture while the people who live here can also enjoy the upward trajectory of this community? So serving the constituents of District 2 will be my first priority, and making sure that we're in the conversations, but we're also a part of the upward mobility and movement that the rest of Omaha is seeing. Listen, I'm on the ground right now helping to solve, the issues of crime and public safety in the Business Improvement District. And I focus a lot on the BID because I really believe it's a blueprint. This is a microcosm of the rest of District 2. So I think you need, number one, the community engaged in the solutions. You've got to have people and their voices being heard. But even that represents a broad spectrum of people that need to be heard. Since 2021, we've lowered the homicide rate in the BID area from coming to Meredith Avenue from 25th Street to 20th Street by 50%. Listen, this is how we did it. We did it through, first of all, community conversations. You know, how do the people feel? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are some of the challenges that we may not be astute to, right? We've also did that through public service announcements, just basic, hey guys, let's keep it safe, keep it clean, keep it legal, keep it respectful. I mean, that can go a long way. Literally, during 2021, when we had a lot of nuisance activity on North 24th Street, that messaging alone not only helped people to see, hey, you need to be a good neighbor, but we know it also helped to save lives because that homicide rate went down. Well, so let me give you a real-time example. We had a lot of issues with nuisance after hours activity here in the North 24th Street Business Improvement District. And quite frankly, it was like one or two bad hot spots. And I just say bad because when we went to talk to them as neighbors and just said, hey, this is what the neighbors are saying, they didn't respond, okay? So I really think that that's the first approach, especially when it's not violent crime, right? Talk to your neighbors about how something might be better, how they could improve. That works when you have reciprocal neighbors, when you have people willing to listen to say, hey, and we did have an entity on North 24th Street that decided they were gonna close at midnight because they realized their after hours crowds were disturbing the neighborhood. But we had one who didn't. And they went on to continue to have some very nefarious activities and even shots fired and unfortunately homicides and other activities. We worked with the precinct, but we also talked to the community. We worked with city government to form a disorderly premise law. All that really meant was, hey, 3 strikes and we're trying to get around this bottle club loophole. We did not have that support from our current city council person. So here's the thing. Alternative solutions work when people are willing to work them. And I've walked through those channels and those pathways, right? So to answer your question along the lines with that same scenario, we were told that that nuisance entity could only be managed if there were enough police in the area. So what that meant, what did that mean? A lot of the neighbors in that area were still experiencing sleepless nights, drug paraphernalia in their yards, fights, and a lot of other nefarious things happen after 2:30 in the morning. So really, I've taken the pathways to solve problems on a numerous levels because I do believe, give people a chance to be a good neighbor, right? Give people a chance to community problem solve. And so today, we've seen the adverse effect of when at least the precinct tells us there's not enough police. And unfortunately, that adverse effect has been lost lives. Since 2022, in the North 24th Street Business Improvement District area, we've had 6 homicides. But guess what? 5 of those homicides happened after 2:30 in the morning. And I look at that as lives being saved. So no matter what those individuals were doing, you know, they should still be here. And so when I look at that holistic perspective, again, I can't stress more that first you do start neighbor to neighbor, community to community, but then when those channels don't work, you need to look to alternative solutions to ensure that the community as a whole is safe. Yeah, so talked about neighborhood investment, and I love neighborhood investment because that's where our work started. So we started with a community garden, and although people say, well, you know, you need more, it's a great starting place for the everyday resident who may just want to be a part of, you know, building up their community. And so I also want to mention that I'm a member of the International Economic Development Council, and the North 24th Street Business Improvement District is one of 65 host sites across the nation that's actually working collaboratively with other entities to create transformative economic development. So I'm right in the mix, not only doing the work on the ground, but also working with a cohort of organizations to look at what communities need in urban, rural, and tribal communities across the United States and U.S. territories. So, economic development's complex. Okay, many people think of entrepreneurship, and that's a part of it. Many people think of workforce and jobs, and that's a part of it too. Today, my organization's raised $2 million to help small businesses along this corridor to improve their facades, to help with their, tenant build out, because we want to see, first of all, our legacy businesses sustained. Okay, everybody wants to still be able to go to Get and Go, Littlefields, and still see those businesses thriving if they so choose when everything else is built up. So we don't want to lose those legacy businesses. So that support through facade improvement can really help them to move forward with the rest of the trajectory of this community. But I also think that we've got to take advantage of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are already slated for this community. And many people will say, well, where it's at? Where is it? I'm going to tell you, economic development is a long game. Think of economic development as not a checker match, but a chess match. If you think of it from that perspective, then people have the patience to stay engaged and to get involved. So one of the things I think we really need to be doing, and this is more of a leadership role versus an actual city council role, is how do we get the workforce available and ready to take advantage of these hundreds of millions of dollars of projects that are happening with them. The Airport Business Park, Levi Carter Park, the 16th Street iHub, North 24th Street Streetscape Plan and Facade Improvement, and other development that is slated to happen right here in this community. So I think that's just step one. We've got to get the skill set. We've got to go to the high schools. We got to start talking to some of these juniors and seniors and saying, hey, you know what? In 18 months and 24 months, you could have a certificate that could then lead you into a career where you're helping on some of these major projects. So really, there is so much happening now that we really need to be in tune with. I even think of it from this angle. You got all these construction sites about to pop up. They're going to need to eat. What about the food trucks? What about the vendors, okay? You're not hearing a lot of people talk about that because they want to sow fear and doubt. But the truth is there's hundreds of millions of dollars awarded to this district that we, as the people who live, work, play, and worship in this community, need to be ready to take advantage of. Listen, there are a couple opportunities within the current climate action plan that we definitely need to be in tune with and on top of. We also have our parks and recs that my understanding are they're about to do a full-fledged, strategic plan for our parks and green spaces along the city. We need to be a part of that conversation. Now, I have raised $13 million for our streetscape plan that includes ensuring that the tree canopy remains, but also that there's landscaping and green spaces as we rebuild this street district, okay, and the streetscape, all right? So, but we also have an issue, okay, with the fact that this area is one of the largest Superfund sites in the nation. Okay, and although there were efforts in the past to clean up a lot of that lead remediation, we still need to be focused on that. We also have a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of old factories and plants that we need to look at where there's funding to remediate those sites because they could also be, opportunities for redevelopment. So again, I think number one, you've got a climate action plan that the city says they want to implement. Well, we need to hold the city to it and to ensure that those resources are equitably distributed and to ensure that North 24th Street, North Omaha, North Downtown is not left behind. Okay, but then there are other initiatives in play like that Superfund site. Are residents taking advantage of those dollars to remediate of their land and the soil or surrounding? The last time I looked at a map, it seemed like there was still a lot of work to be done. So now's the time to to plug into that climate action plan and ensure that those resources come to District 2 like the rest of the city. Well, we know that clean energy is the future, and we also know that there's been historical practices of certain plants and coal burning industries happening in communities like ours, Black and brown communities, right? If an entity is going to say that they're going to, move on to a cleaner, more environmentally safe form of energy, then they need to keep their word. I think that starts with a conversation. I think then we need to see what are not just the lip service, but then what are the steps that they're moving toward, where are those funding sources, and stay on top of that. Okay, oftentimes when you see negotiations collapse or entities maybe fall short of their word, we need to understand why, and then we need to find the roadmap and the blueprints that's going to say, okay, then if not now, when? And not just through lip service, but also look at what other communities are doing. My understanding is that there's several ways of looking at clean energy that could benefit that OPPD plant. I think the community should always be engaged, and if it affects you the most, then you should be engaged the most. I also think that it's important that we stay engaged as a community during the highs and the lows of the process, okay? And oftentimes when things start with planning, when they just start with some of that basic, what might seem boring surveys, conversations, that's the time to still stay at the table, okay? Can't stress enough that economic development is a long game. A lot of these decisions at the city level are a long game. And again, it's one of the reasons why I want to raise up neighborhoods, because I believe if you've got point people attending and engaging with various, forums and various initiatives, then they can take that information back to their community and to ensure that folks are aware. I pride myself on, we do a ton of meetings at the BID. We try to have quarterly stakeholder meetings where we send a postcard out to everybody in this district and say, this is the time and this is the place, and even provide a virtual option. We have committees that we want, again, people to be engaged with and be involved in. So not only can we hear their concerns, but then they can hear from the experts who say, okay, this is how you navigate this problem, and this is how you come to a solution. But I also think it's important that we are solution-based. Sometimes we want to burn it down, but we also have to say, okay, what's the end goal? And although there may be a snag in the road or something we don't like, how do we as a community still get what we want? I can tell you, in this role with the Business Improvement District and in economic development, there have been times that the city has ticked me off. Things did not go the way that we'd worked toward. But it's like, okay, either you drop out and you lose the progress, or you stay in the game and you figure out how to make sure your district isn't left behind. Currently, we have a city council person that does not meet with the mayor. She's not in pre-planning meetings, okay? She doesn't have the best relationship with our city planning department. That can't be, because then our constituents aren't being represented. So we've got to learn how to hold the city accountable to transparency, okay? And including us in conversations. But then when we run into a snag, it's not gonna be the first or last hurdle. How do you get over the hurdle? How do you get around the hurdle? How do you go under the hurdle to get this community what it needs? It's really time that District 2 moves forward with the rest of the city of Omaha. It's going to take a strong leader, someone who understands how to navigate city government, understands how to take the citizens' concerns back to city government, and then enact strategy that turns into planning, which turns into funding, which turns into implementation, which then will turn into a better District 2. Well, listen, since the 80s, we know that a lot of our mental health facilities, they don't exist. And I personally, just in my personal life, with family members, with friends, have had to navigate, oftentimes unsuccessfully, with the current mental health resources available. And so I think it touches all of us. I think two things need to happen. One, there's going to have to be a strong partnership with the county. Okay, that's where a lot of our public health resources lie. But then also those entities that currently serve this community and the those who are in need of mental health services, we've got to find out how the city budget can better support those entities. Clearly, we also know that people tend to like to receive services by people who look like them, maybe speak a native language as them. All right, so that diversity and that support is also going to be important. I think as a leader, from a leadership position, we've got to elevate, number one, that it's okay to get help, but then also we got to ensure that those entities, those clinics, those therapists are available on the ground in District 2. I think the city as a whole could use additional resources. And again, that comes from my personal experience navigating sometimes those resources for family and friends. Yeah, first of all, again, you have to be able to meet with the mayor, all right, and have a working relationship with whoever the next mayor is in order to navigate that budget. Year to date, I've helped raise nearly $3 million from that budget, okay? So I understand you've got to have the right projects and proposals to be able to get money from that budget. And so today, with our North 24th Street Streetscape Master Plan, we have the city of Omaha matching our raised funds at 20%, okay? So we're doing that, and I understand how to work with the mayor, okay, and whatever mayor might precede her to make sure that District 2 is represented. Now, some of that comes down to the projects and the programs that are happening in the district. So then you need to hear from people on the ground, all right? Those entities that are supported, whether they're through housing, all right, whether they've got safety and crime prevention, all right? So there are certain initiatives that come through the community service budget that are also funded by the mayor. And so it's gonna be reciprocal in that you gotta understand, okay, what are the programs and projects that budget can support in your district, but then, you know, you've got to be able to meet with the mayor like I do. I'll meet with her in 2 weeks about the North 24th Street Business Improvement District, purely so we can ensure that some of the projects we're currently working on continue to receive funding. So there's a way to do it, but you got to understand how to navigate the process. And listen, you don't have to like that person who's in office to get something done for your community, because that's really why you're elected. You're elected to represent the community, but furthermore to ensure that your community is a part of the bigger process within that city budget. So to be clear, I've navigated the city budget, I've raised dollars from that city budget, and I know how to have that conversation and to bring the right projects and programs through working with constituents and people on the ground to ensure that more of those dollars. I want to be clear, these last 4 years, we've lost out on a lot of opportunities. We really should not accept it that our current council person was not meeting with the mayor, because really what it meant is the 77,000 constituents, their voices weren't being heard, and that budget wasn't accurately reflecting what this community needed. So remember, I've raised $13 million for streets and sidewalks and a multimodal transportation plan for North 24th Street. And we're in the first phases of planning and implementation for that. That's going to include multimodal transportation and how bikes, cars, and pedestrians, most importantly, navigate this street. So I do have experience there. That conversation won't just be with the mayor. You've got to work with the Metro Area Planning Agency and Metro Area Transit, okay? Our city needs to be better connected. Right now, our transportation won't really take you from A to B in a timely, convenient fashion. And guess what? 30 years ago, we were doing better on transportation. So I really think we need to elevate those metro area planning agency plans that are going to better connect this city. I do know that Metro Area Transit just had a RAISE grant that was going to study how traffic and how the transit moved up and down the north and south corridor. So it was going to go north to south, okay? I need to review on what those plans have, really what were the results, what were the findings, right? But those are also federal dollars that are typically needed. And right now, federal money is very iffy, okay? So we are going to have to see where are some of those local avenues to ensure that as our city grows, our public transportation is growing and being able to be sustained with the growth of a population who we know are using less cars. So right now, it's a comprehensive conversation that goes beyond the mayor. You got to talk with the planning agency. We are partners with them currently on the North 24th Street Business Improvement District. So there is a relationship there, as is there with Metro Area Transit. Right now, we need more amenities just along this corridor. And I've helped advocate for that and raise dollars for that as well. So we should see that down the pipeline. So part of it is, even as a District 2 city council representative, I'd be looking at how do we elevate that plan, because you elevate North 24th Street, one of the busiest corridors in this district, you're going to see some of that trajectory happen across the rest of the district. But there needs to be a comprehensive strategy. It needs to be something that is going to better connect the entire city together for public transportation.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say that I just raised $100,000 to market and brand this area, and we're going to be excited to do a lot of the community engagement around that. I believe in getting the money because you can talk all day, but you need the strategy, the plan, and then you need to go for the funding. Nebraska has something called creative districts, and they are popping up all over this state. And guess what? We are sitting right here, again, on North 24th Street, where it is the hub of so much culture, so much arts. And last year we did a tour of 14 venues within this area because we were saying, hey, we've got the venues here now. Let's elevate them, okay? I do think people need to understand that the government does play within the arts sector, especially as it pertains to the funding mechanism, okay? So even if they're not entirely leading the creative process, they're still funding and setting up the parameters and policies, right? So I do think that there's a way for various areas of North Omaha, starting with North 24th Street. I know I talk about that a lot, but this is one of the founding thoroughfares of our city, and definitely not only a historically designated district, but we know so much culture, arts, jazz, history happened along this corridor. Tourism is an economic development tool, okay? We see downtown do billions of dollars in tourism every year. We need to elevate this community so that we're taking advantage of our cultural assets as well. And people know they're here, know that they're welcome, and know that this is a place that is uniquely positioned to tell some unique stories about our city and our state. So last year I was working with the artist community in this area. We started talking about a creative district. We ran into a bit of an impasse, but that creative district opportunity is still on the table, and that's one of the first tools to fund the arts, really from a broader kind of community level that I see. But I am also connected to the National Endowment of the Arts at the federal level, because you can always look at local, state, federal, when it comes to the funding piece. But I do think there needs to be some conversations with our local artists to ensure them that even if government plays a role, doesn't mean we're playing the creative role, but there are policies and funding mechanisms that will and should come through the government.